Hi, it's Chris here, and today we'll be talking about inclusive classrooms and the cross-cultural issues that they will face. I'll be joined today by a teacher named Jordan during this talk, and he has worked in inclusive classrooms for the last couple of years, so we'll get a good perspective from him. Now, inclusive classrooms are a classroom that have a range of different students that are in them, and it gives the opportunity for everyone in that class to have the same education. It often has a mixture of general needs students and students with special needs, whether that be an ethnic difference, physical disability, or a neurological disability. The neurological differences may be autism, ADHD, dyslexia, as well as many more. Students with special needs are often subjected to bullying and isolation. In an article done by Paris, she stated that it is often because there is a lack of understanding of students with special needs that causes bullying. A study by the New South Wales government investigated various studies about bullying towards special needs and the importance of inclusive classrooms. The studies show that students that have been in inclusive classrooms have less involvement in bullying, whether that be they are the ones being bullied or they are the bully themselves. This is quite often because the students get to learn from one another and they are interacting with each other on a daily basis. So yeah, it just breaks down the stigmatism of bullying. Of the unknown of someone with a disability, and that I guess scared kind of culture that they are different. Now, schools in Australia are able to have inclusive classrooms due to legislation such as the Disability Discrimination Act of 1992 and the Disability Standards for Education from 2005. These legislations allow children with special needs to have the same opportunity with the access to the curriculum as just your able-bodied students. It also allows them to be accepted into the schools that they wish to go to, and also allows for no discrimination by the schools and from students around them. Today I'd like to focus our podcast around neurodiverse disabilities. Like I said, I'll discuss later on with Jordan and his experience in the classroom with neurodiverse students. As stated earlier, neurodiverse students have disabilities such as autism, ADHD, ADD, dyslexia, and other issues that can lead to other neuro issues that can lead to physical problems such as visual or auditory issues. Some neurodiversities are easier to deal with than others. I personally have a history with dyslexia, one that doesn't have as many issues as others. My older brother and two of my cousins struggled quite badly with their dyslexia throughout school. They were in just general classrooms throughout their whole schooling lives, but they were quite often given special considerations, in particular in exams. So they were given, extra time or put in other rooms to not get distracted. But they all finished school and they're all exceeding relatively well in their work lives at the moment. They haven't really let their dyslexia get in the way of them, which is great. My brother actually managed to get an advanced diploma in a counselling course before he followed our father's footsteps in becoming a police teacher. He's rarely let his dyslexia overpower him at all. Alright, now to Jordan. Jordan is a primary school teacher and he has taught in a few schools around the Newcastle area. For most of last year, he took up a role in a school that had a range of neurodiverse students. That was fairly eye-opening, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, absolutely.
So I just got a few questions for you. Now, from what I've been reading about neurodiversity and how students with disabilities related to neurological problems are in the classroom, it seems to be quite difficult to teach all the students in the same ways. In what way did you manage to teach the range of students you had? And did you have different teaching methods for individual students with neurological disabilities?
Yeah, great. Look, you can't teach all students in the same way, even if there are no students with neurological problems in your class. All students learn differently in different ways, so you just need to cater to that on a day-to-day basis. In my class, I had multiple students with a diagnosis. One, for example, worked above stage level and required extension. So this just meant that I had to find ways to extend this learner. Their strength was literacy, so I found ways for them to add complexity to their writing. I also gave them agency over what they wrote about. It was key that I moved this student's seated position, or who they sat with, for their social needs, as they had a tendency to burn other students out. They weren't nasty, they were just highly medicated and unable effectively to read social situations. Thankfully, they still had multiple friends, so it wasn't too much of an issue. Another student, for example, was clever academically but disengaged during lessons. When held accountable in a respectful way, they produced quality work in literacy and numeracy. The use of technology as well helped to engage this student, and just setting different expectations in the work they completed also helped them to work quite well. But yeah, they didn't always need to practice something 20 times to understand it, which was good. And finally, another student was working below stage level and required consistent attention with their own program. Simple routine-based activities helped the student develop some form of self-efficacy and independence, and now they're in a small class for children with autism. Apart from that final student, the whole class participated in the same lesson, but I had different expectations and activities for different students, obviously. And stuff like extension activities were ready for the more advanced students.
Oh, that's great. It sounds like there's a few different teaching methods you had to include there, and yeah, it sounds like it wasn't as difficult as it might seem.
No, I think getting to know the students as well is pretty key to that.
Yeah, now, bullying is quite a big issue when it comes to students with disabilities. Even without disabilities, bullying is quite big around schools. But I was reading a few studies, and there was a study conducted by the Queensland government, and it showed 62% of students with autism were reported to be bullied at least once a week.
Yeah, okay.
Around the world, in the US and the UK, there was reports with students with disabilities that they were 2 to 3 times more likely to be bullied than able-bodied students. From your experience, did you have to deal with any of these issues in your classroom? And does your school have any practices to prevent or actively discourage bullying?
Yeah, look, issues such as bullying, I believe, just need to initially be addressed at a whole school level, regardless of where it takes place. And students need to be completely aware that bullying just isn't okay. I guess step one is a preventative measure. Programs such as PBL, or Positive Behaviour for Learning, explicitly teach students expectations and social skills. And this is great for addressing issues such as bullying before the bullying actually occurs. Demonstrating and praising healthy social interaction is also pretty key. I guess at times it's good to have honest conversations with students. In the older years that I've sort of dealt with, I believe it's okay to tell students that they aren't going to get along with everyone, but it's important that we always treat people with respect, because we're all equal. And if bullying is occurring, there needs to be consistent practices to address this. Stuff like group meditation, discussion about values, and often sort of the negative consequences to bullying are part of this. In relation to your question with students with special needs, all students need to have knowledge that all people are different, and that some do have disabilities whilst being all equal. When students are educated about disabilities, they're more tolerant and accepting of students with disabilities that I've found. In my class in particular, the main issues occurred when other students didn't understand how a child with autism acted or interacted with others. So that was a bit complicated until there was discussion about it.
Well, it's good. It's good that the school has things in place to mediate that, and it sounds like there's not a lot of bullying that happens in the classrooms with the kids with disabilities included. But yeah, it's all something we have to work on. Now, in inclusive classrooms, the idea is to have all types of students working together so they can learn from one another. In doing so, it helps the students learn to accept those with other learning needs from an early age, as well as create friendships that they would not be able to have in a non-inclusive classroom. In your classes, did you have any students engaging with one another or forming friendships that you might have thought might have been unlikely, or did you feel you had to force engagement between the individuals? Because it was quite often isolation is a big thing when it comes to kids with disabilities. So I just want to know if that was an issue in your classroom.
Yeah, good questions. Look, I think it really depends on how students interact socially, but also academically. Each child with a diagnosis in my class interacted with others quite differently. When there are tolerant and accepting students with leadership capabilities, group work's highly effective. I have taught a class with a child diagnosed with autism. He was able to lead groups in different activities because he was driven. He was able to lead, but I had to be careful sort of with my groupings, as he had a tendency to say some rude things without quite knowing or fully understanding what it meant, and the effect that it would also have on the other students in the class. Having a student with special needs in a class in infant years is good for other students, as they're more willing to sort of accept them and develop an understanding for their behaviours. From my experience at least, you can tell when students have been in class with a child with special needs from a young age, as they demonstrate that understanding, that tolerance and willingness to get alongside and help the student. So they just treat the student as they would anyone else, which is quite a nice thing to see. When students don't share the classrooms with students with special needs until sort of your late primary or early high school years, they often don't have the understanding. They're less tolerant and they're less inclusive with the student. That's just my experience. But I would say that forced group work can be a positive thing unless a student demonstrates an obvious strong dislike for another on multiple occasions, or they demonstrate consistent defiance. Often students won't like a forced grouping at the start, but they do get used to it. They learn to work with whoever they are grouped with, regardless of whether there are any sort of disabilities or not. So I think that can be a very positive thing.
Well, that's great. It seems like inclusive classrooms should really start pretty much from kindergarten, just absolutely. So they get that sort of interaction and bullying and isolation might not happen much at all if it starts from an early age.
Yeah, we hope so.
Well, thanks for that, Jordan. It was insightful.
Great.
Well, it seems like inclusive classrooms are an important way for students to interact with a diverse group of students. I think it is evident from what Jordan has said that the earlier the students start in an inclusive classroom, the better it will be for their development. I think it is important that all schools allow for inclusive classrooms, and also believe that teachers of these classes should be well prepared for teaching a wide, diverse group of students. From listening to what Jordan had to say about his experience in inclusive classrooms, I think as an aspiring teacher myself, I learned a few things and hope to be able to manage the diversity in my classroom as well as Jordan has. Although my situation might be slightly different as I'm hoping to be a high school teacher and not a primary school teacher, I think it would be great if once my students get into the classroom at the high school level, they have had the experience in inclusive classrooms throughout their primary school years and show the respect towards each other. Thanks for listening, and thank you again to Jordan.